boys and girls, you're all welcome to lesson 19. I'm here to take you through lesson 19, but before we look at lesson 19, we need to make corrections for the previous lesson, and that was lesson 18. Now, here are the corrections for activity 18. Number 1, part A of the activity. As you look through your work, the circumference is 66 meters. Please look through the steps that you wrote down. Number 1, part B, the circumference is 132 centimeters. Number 2 of the activity, the circumference is 110 centimeters as you look through your work. Number 3, the circumference is 62.8 meters. Number 4, looking through the steps that you wrote down, your circumference has to be 94.2 centimeters. Number 5, which is the last question as per that activity, the circumference is 132 centimeters. But remember, I'm here to take you through lesson 19. And in lesson 19, we want to look at finding the radius or diameter of a circle given circumference. Our subtopic is finding the radius or diameter of a circle given circumference. Number 1, example 1. Find the diameter of a circle whose circumference is 66 centimeters. Use pi as 22 out of 7. Find the diameter of a circle whose circumference is 66 centimeters. Use pi as 22 out of 7. In this question, they want us to find the diameter. And in this question, we are given the circumference. And our circumference is 66 centimeters. It's very, very important for you to identify the keywords in a given question. So under those keywords, among the keywords we have is the circumference, which is equal to 60 centimeters. We are going to use this circumference to look for the diameter. And remember, in the previous lesson, you were taught that circumference is equal to pi d. That's when you are given the diameter. We are going to use that very formula to look for diameter because we have our circumference as 66 and we are told to use pi as 22 out of 7. So in the next step, having studied the formula, we need to carry out our substitution, whereby pi will be replaced by 22 out of 7 times the diameter, which we don't know. This is equal to our circumference, which is 66 centimeters. In our next step, we shall multiply 7 on both sides. 7 times 7 times 22 out of 7 times diameter is equal to 66 centimeters times 7. We shall divide by 7 and come up with a 1. 7 divided by 7, we come up with a 1. In our next step, we shall have 22 times diameter. This is equal to 66 centimeters times 7 centimeters. In our next step, we need to divide. We shall write that. We divide on both sides. We shall divide on both sides by 22. Even this other side, we shall divide by 22. We are dividing by 22 because we need to look for the value of y. In other words, we need to look for the value of y. So by 22 here, we shall come up with a 1. By 22, we shall come up with a 1. On this other side, by 22, we shall come up with a 1. 66 divided by 22, we shall come up with a 3. So 1 times d, 1 times diameter, this will equal to 3 centimeters times 7. Diameter is equal to 3 centimeters times 7, and we shall come up with our diameter being equal to 21. But as usual, we need to underline our answer. That is example 1. You need critically to look at the steps, study them so well, and then look at also the final conclusion of the question. Now, let us also take a look at example 2. Example 2 says, the circumference of a circular tin is 31.4 decimeters. Find the diameter of the tin. Use pi as 3.14. Our first pi in example 1 was 22 out of 7. And you know it very well when to use pi as 22 out of 7. In this situation, they want us to use pi as a decimal. We use pi as a decimal when you are dealing with numbers that are not multiples of 7. And we use 22 out of 7 when we are dealing with numbers that are multiples of 7. So in this situation, looking at example 2, the circumference of the circular tin is 31.4 decimeters. Find the diameter of the tin, and we are told to use pi at 3.14. We need to identify the circumference. Our circumference is 31.4 decimeters. After identification of the circumference, remember, in this question, they want us to look for the diameter. And we know the formula for calculating circumference given diameter. We shall just use the very formula because we have the circumference in order for us to look for the diameter. And we shall state the formula, which is pi d is equal to circumference. In our next step, we shall carry out the substitution. We shall replace pi with 3.14 times the diameter being equal to the circumference, which is 31.4 decimeters. In the next step, we shall convert the decimal numbers into fractions. Remember, we had 3.14, and 3.14 is changing to 314 out of 100. Why are we putting 314 out of 100? It's because we had 2 places of decimals. So 3.14 is the same as 314 out of 100 times the diameter. This will equal to, we had 31.4 decimeters, and it has now been changed into 314 out of 10 decimeters. We are dividing it by 10 because it had 1 place of decimal. So in our next step, we shall multiply 100 on both sides of the equation. Times 100 times 314 out of 100 times diameter. This is equal to 314 out of 10 decimeters times 100. At this very stage, we shall cancel the 2 zeros, and we shall also cancel those 2 zeros. In other words, 100 divided by 100, we shall come up with that 1. We have a 1 there and also 1 down. So on this other side, we shall cancel this 0 with also that 0. So in our next step, we shall have 314 times diameter is equal to 314 decimeters times 10. That is the outcome after multiplying by 100 on both sides. So in our next step, we shall have to divide on both sides by 314 by 314. Why are we dividing by 314? It's because we need to look for the value of d, and which d is standing for our diameter. So by 314, we come up with a 1. By 314, we come up with a 1. Even this other side, we shall say by 314, we come up with a 1. By 314, we come up with a 1. So we have 1 times diameter out of 1, which is equal to 1 decimeter times 10. So which we shall write as diameter is equal to 1 decimeter times 10. Finally, our diameter will equal to 10 decimeters. We shall underline our answer. My dear candidates, my dear learners, looking at the 2 examples, example 1 and example 2, They all required us to look for the diameter. But now let us look at example 3. Example 3 says the circumference of a circle is 44 meters. Find its radius. Use pi as 22 out of 7. The circumference of a circle is 44 meters. Find its radius. Use pi as 22 out of 7. We need to identify those keywords. 1, we need to look for the circumference. We need to identify, the circumference, which is 44 meters. And remember, in this question, they want us to find the radius. But previously, you looked at that. You looked at that in lesson 18. How to look for circumference given radius. We shall use the very formula for us to get the radius, which formula is 2 pi r is equal to circumference. 2 pi r is equal to circumference. We are using 2 pi r equals circumference because we are looking for radius. We use pi d equals circumference as we look for diameter. So now we shall now carry out the substitution. We shall have our 2 times the pi, which is 22 out of 7, times the radius, this is equal to 44 meters. In our next step, we shall multiply 7 on both sides, the denominator. We shall multiply 7 on both sides, whereby we shall have 7 times 2 times 22 out of 7 times the radius. This is equal to 44 meters times 7. We shall divide by 7. 7 into 7 equals 1. 7 divided by 7 equals 1. In our next step, we shall have 2, 1 times 2 is 2, times 22, times the radius. This is equal to 44 meters times 7. So after writing that step, in our next step we need to divide, whereby we shall divide on both sides. 22 times 2 times r, but out of 2 times 22, this will equal to 44 meters times 7, but out of 2 times 22. We are dividing by 22 times 2 on both sides because we want to look for the value of r. So at this stage, we shall divide by 2. 2 into 2, we come up with a 1. 2 into 2, we come up with a 1. 22 into 20, divide by 22, we shall come up with a 1. 22 divided by 22, we shall come up with a 1. So by 2, we come up with a 1. 44 divided by 2, we shall come up with a 22. So now, we need to cancel the 22 by 22. So by 22, we come up with a 1. 22 divided by 2, by 22, we come up with a 1. So we have 1 times r, which is r, being equal to 1 meter times 7. So r, which is our radius, is equal to 1 meter times 7, finally giving us our radius being equal to 70 meters. We shall underline that answer. That is the answer for example 3. You need to take care, go through the steps, study the steps carefully as per this number, because there is a difference between the first 2 examples and example 3. In the first 2 examples, you were meant to look for diameter. In example 3, you were meant to look for radius. So you need to use the right formula when working out what is really required according to the question. Now our last example, which is example 4. Example 4 says the distance covered by a wheel in 1 revolution is 110 centimeters. Calculate the radius of the wheel. Use pi as 3, 1 out of 7. The distance covered by a wheel in 1 revolution is 110 centimeters. Calculate the radius of the wheel. Use pi at 3, 1 out of 7. When they talk about distance covered by a wheel in 1 revolution, that is automatically, they are talking about circumference. And remember, circumference is equal to 1 revolution. Circumference is equal to 1 revolution. Circumference is equal to 1 revolution. In this situation, they want you to calculate the radius. They want you to calculate the radius. And remember, before we look at the radius, our circumference as per this number being equal to 1 revolution is 110 centimeters. After identifying the circumference, our next step is to state the formula, which is 2 pi r is equal to circumference. Now, before we get to the next step, look at our pi. I told you pi earlier on in the previous lesson. You were given the 3 values of pi. Pi can be expressed as an improper fraction, which is 22 out of 7. Pi can be expressed as a decimal, which is 3.14. Pi can be expressed as a mixed fraction, which is 3, 1 out of 7. And here we are using pi as a mixed fraction. But remember, when you look at 3, 1 out of 7, we shall need to convert it back to what we call an improper fraction. And when you convert it back to an improper fraction, you come up with the 22 out of 7 as your pi. Now, our next step is to carry out the substitution. We shall have 2 times 22 out of 7. 22 out of 7 is coming from here. 22 out of 7 is coming from this point where we have used pi as 3, 1 out of 7. 3, 1 out of 7, when you convert it back to an improper, it will give us 22 out of 7. So in this statement, we shall write 2 times 22 out of 7 times radius. This is equal to 110 centimeters. Next step. We shall multiply throughout by 7, whereby we shall have 7 times 2 times 22 out of 7 times r, which is our radius. This is equal to 110 centimeters times 7. At this very step, we shall cancel. By 7, we come up with a 1. 7 into 7, we come up with a 1. Our next step. We shall have 2 times 22 times r, which is our radius. This is equal to 110 centimeters times 7. In the next step, we shall have to divide on both sides by 2 times 22, whereby we shall have 2 times 22 times r out of 2 times 22. This is equal to 110 centimeters times 7 out of 2 times 22. So we shall cancel by 2, we come up with a 1. 2 into 2, we come up with a 1. 22 divided by 22, we come up with a 1. 22 into 22, we come up with a 1. By 2, we come up with a 1. 110 divided by 2, we come up with 55. So now, looking at 55 and 22, we shall cancel. We shall reduce using 11. 22 divided by 11, we come up with a 2. 55 divided by 11, we come up with a 5. So we shall have 1 times r, which will give us r being equal to 5 centimeters times 7, which is 35 centimeters, but out of the denominator, which is 2. That is our statement. That is our statement. We shall come up 1 times r is r, being equal to 5 centimeters times 7, which is giving us our numerator as 35, but out of the denominator, which is 2. So at this stage, we need to reduce. We shall when we divide by 2, we shall come up with a 1. 35 divided by 2, my dear boys and girls, we shall come up with 17, remainder 1. So our radius becomes 17.5 centimeters. Why 17.5? Remember, as a mixed fraction, it was 17, 1 out of 2. A half, as a decimal number, is expressed as 0.5. finally giving us our radius at 17.5 centimeters. We shall finally underline that. So these are the 4 examples as per this work. What you have to do, my dear boys and girls, is to take your time, go through the examples. You'll be in position to answer the activity. It's my humble prayer. Do this work with all your heart, with all your soul, because it's for the good of your future. I wish you well. May God richly bless you.